Welcome to my reading corner, and I thought I would talk about the authors I discovered in 2018. Now, I don't remember which booktuber I watched who did this before. That's where I get my ideas for videos. Is I just use other people's ideas, and so I love to give the person credit whose video I watched, but I don't remember who it was. I should have wrote it down, but I didn't. Like I said, my goal this year is to come up with different types of new. One of my goals is to come up with different, content to film videos, not just like book hauls or TBRs, which I've kind of stopped doing. Or I've definitely focused more on reviews so far. I've done 3, but it's surprising. It's really hard to come up with unique ideas, and there are limits. I feel like I do have limits. And some of them are limits that I'm just a little, still not entirely comfortable. And some of the limits are things like, it's just me doing these videos. And even if, like, my parents are aware that I film these videos, but they wouldn't, I don't think they would come on here. I mean, maybe my dad would be, but and also it would be just very hard to get them to participate because they do other stuff. My mom still works. My dad has a job at the golf course, like a part-time type job, so he doesn't have to pay as much because this is kind of like a gated community where I live, but it's without the gate, so it does cost a lot of money to be living here and to be a member of the country club. So my dad got a part-time job, so he doesn't have to pay as much to golf. But, and then my sister, of course, doesn't. My sister and my friends do not live anywhere near me, so I can't really get them involved unless they come to visit. And so far, only Terry from Florida has come to visit. And then, also, and also there's things that, like, I can't do. That are a bit, like, I'm not, like, a tech genius or tech savvy or anything, so I don't know this, I don't know a lot of stuff, and neither do my parents. They know even less than I do. I mean, they can obviously go on the internet and email, do all the basic internet stuff. I mean, and they have more knowledge of technology than I have. Friends whose family members don't have a lot of knowledge on this kind of stuff. But like, when we get a virus on my computer, we still have to call my uncle for a little bit of help just to make sure the virus, there's a way to get rid of it, or to make sure it's legit or something. So, I'm trying to, I try to consider my limits and try to figure out ways that I can still get creative without having to. And also, I can just get really impatient to the point of where I might have, out of frustration, have temper tantrums because I get so frustrated, angry, and I'm like, and I need help, someone else's help to help me figure it out and to calm me down. And I'm, and of course my parents would, get a little impatient with me because it's not as big of a deal to them as it is for me. So anyway, let me get to the point of the video. Like I said, I'm going to talk about the authors that I discovered last year. So first one is Robin Hobb, the author of the Elderling series. She is one of those authors who writes a bunch of little books, a smaller series, in one big overall series. And that series, like I said, is called The Elderlings, The Realm of the Elderlings. And this is her first trilogy in that world. The Farseer trilogy. And this is the first book, The Assassin's Apprentice, which is basically about this boy named Fitz, who is the bastard child of one of the princes of this kingdom. And it's all about him and his father's father, the king, discovers Fitz and offers him protection, but Fitz is still not technically part of the royal family. He's still a bastard and is treated like crap. But he ends up putting Fitz with his assassin, Shade, and Fitz trains to be an assassin, hence the title. And there's, things like magic in this book. It's kind of like, I imagine it's similar to Lord of the Rings in the writing style, which makes me feel a little guilty because I've said that I just can't read Lord of the Rings. I've attempted to read The Fellowship, I just can't get into it. But this one I was able to get into and read. Although I've recently stopped with the second one. But I'm going to continue it because I have the books. Not all of her books, but I'm slowly obtaining them. And I don't want to give up. I don't want to feel like I wasted my money. I still want, it's just right now, the second one's just a little slow. But I do need to get back into it. That there's, like I said, there's magic, and there's kingdoms, and there's war and politics. And the fact it's from this young man's perspective, even though there is romance in the story, because he does, in the second one, he does develop romantic feelings towards his childhood best friend, a girl. But it isn't, it isn't like, it's not a dominant plot point in the story, which is like, yes, it proves it, because, ever since, on a site, I remember seeing someone's comment about how, oh, of course a woman wrote this because women can't write things like, gritty and war and politics. They just write the silly romance stuff and the, all that girls fall in love with sexy, immortal, paranormal guy. And it's like, no, a female author can write this kind of stuff. She can write about politics and war, and it may not be as gruesome and gory, like as, let's say, or as vulgar as George R. R. Martin's books, but it's still really good and still has the same feel of an epic fantasy. And it's not just about the romance. It's in there, but it really does play a small role in the story. It's not even in this first book because it starts with Fitz being a 6-year-old boy. While in the second one, he's becoming a teenager, so of course it does have it a little bit. And I just, I love this world that she's created, and I love all these unique individual characters. And you definitely, from what I've heard, because I've only read this first book, like I said, I just discovered this author, but the impression I get is she is one of those writers that, like, eventually certain things will come together. Like, she introduces little things in her books that will eventually come back again in later books. And the fact that she has created a world that, like, she has separate individual trilogies, or some of them are 4-book series, that eventually all link together in a small way. I love it when authors do that, but then I also feel overwhelmed because I feel like I'm missing the stuff. Especially because for the longest time, and I still do it now, that I will read books, and then I will take, if there are books that are this size or bigger, then I will take breaks in between the reading, especially if the reading is not as exciting and sometimes slows down a little bit in its pacing. Then yeah, that's my issue. That's the only problem with Stephen King, is his pacing is a little bit slower. And he's definitely a character-driven author. But I still enjoy this book, and I enjoy the ideas that they present and everything. It just takes some time for me to read them, which is why I'm still reading The Stand. And I'm just starting to get to the second book, which I do need to read that today. I'm going to read a little bit of that book today, so I can get to book 2 in the whole overall book. But yes, I love, because this Robin Hobb proves that women authors can write these epic fantasies that aren't just about the, young teenagers falling in love with mysterious immortals and stuff like that. She can write a deep and depth fantasy story. And also from a boy's perspective, it's a male character. And this is a female author. And she's writing, her main character is a boy. Is a male character. Now sometimes I do ask myself, what would a male reader, would they feel like Fitz is a realistic male character? Sometimes I wonder about that, but then at the same time I was like, of course we may not be inside of a male's mindset, but I feel like women know enough about males that we could write, if we become an author, we can write a male character and have it be real. But I go back and forth with that. Okay, next. Let's see, can I grab it? Oh, well, I guess I can grab this one. And I'll take this one too. The next one is Brandon Sanderson. I finally jumped on the Brandon Sanderson bandwagon. And I think that Reagan from Peruse Project was the one who sealed the deal for me with this one. And Sam from Sam's Nonsense is the one who sealed the deal for this. Sealed the deal as in they were the ones that persuaded me to read these authors' books. But this is the second one in another series of his. I'm still reading the Mistborn books, and I'm on the last book. And that one is definitely not as slow-paced as Robin Hobb's books. As her books, so from what I've noticed so far. That one's definitely a little bit more fast-paced. Now, I don't know about this series, but again, another fantasy author who their books are much more, like, they have an overall world and story, but they write a bunch of individual trilogies and series in between that overall story that eventually link together into one big universe. I mean, I'm assuming that's what his books are like too. But anyway, like I said, this is the second one of the Stormlight Archive series, which is going to be a lot longer. In case I drool over it, or be amazed by the size of this chunker. But so far he writes a lot more action, a lot more war, less like. There is definitely a little bit more romance in Robin Hobb's books. But so far, of what I've seen so far. But, it's, again, he creates this intricate world and weaving them together and just creating these very unique magic systems. They're all different. And it's not like, it's not like the typical magic systems that you see. Like, all his magic systems are different and unique. And of course, I've only read 2 of his books. But still, from what I've heard, that's what he does. And so far, I haven't been disappointed. I like them. And and again, another author that I'm slowly obtaining his books. And even if I get rid of some of the, books like this, eventually, if I donate them, I will still keep both Robin Hobb and Brandon Sanderson's books. So, next, author number 3, if I can, is Sarah Waters. Now, this is a completely different genre. This is more historical, literary romance. So, yeah, you could argue that her books are romance heavy, but it also is historical. It also depends on how it's written. I'm very cautious about romance books if I do read it. I don't like the idea of the ones with the pretty, handsome six-pack man on the cover, and the woman is a little revealing a little bit of skin, and she's draped all over the guy, and you have the plot seems very dramatic and over the top, and just when I read the back. And maybe it's poorly marketed, and the covers of it are just bad. I don't know, but it doesn't interest me. It turns me off a little bit. But although this cover of this particular one of hers, of Sarah Waters, is a little bit erotic. It's very interesting. Very retro. So you can tell these 2 women. Kind of makes me think of Moulin Rouge a little bit. But this is not the one I've read. The only one I've read of her so far is the Paying Guest. And there are some people who didn't like that book. I don't know though. I mean, I'd be curious to find out why they didn't like it. But I really loved it, and I'm a fan of the 1920s, and I love her writing style is very detailed and beautiful, and you just get lost in the words of her stories. I mean, like I said, I've only read one, so I guess I can't really say her stories. I can say the story. It just, in the setting, and you really feel like you're there in that time period, and it's so, her stories are so beautiful and so emotional. And, I really enjoyed The Paying Guest, so I'm debating about either reading this one, although I did recently start, The Little Stranger, I think it's called. Yeah, Little Stranger. I did start that one. Was kind of a more spooky haunted house type story. Ghost story, in fact, I believe. So I did start reading that one. So I guess I'll go to that one and then read this one. And I definitely want to read more of her books. Like, I only read one of her books last year, so I want to read her other book more than just that. More than one book of hers. And again, another author that I've started collecting her books. Okay, so next, author number 4 is, let's see if I can grab one for books. If not, then I can worry about it. Is her book easy? Where is it? Okay. I don't know where her books are, but I reorganized this again, and I'm doing the Rainbow Shelf. And that is Donna Tartt. Again, another author, I've only read one of her books, but, again, another author that I love the writing style, how detailed it is, and how you can really get lost in the story and get lost in these characters of hers, these characters that she's created. And it was one of those left me warm and fuzzy feelings, despite the fact that it's not a warm and fuzzy book. I mean, basically, the conflict of the line if someone gets murdered and how these characters are dealing with that murder. And I also love books where you have very pretentious, arrogant characters that you just kind of roll your eyes at. I'm just very entertained by those characters, especially when they're not necessarily villains until later, or they're not villains at all. They're just regular people that have to be a little bit arrogant and stupid. But yeah, I want to read her. I bought her book, A Little Friend, I think it's called. I want to read that one. But there's also The Goldfinch. I think I'm gonna read that one first this year, because that one is gonna be made into a movie at some point. Start with Luke. I think Luke Wilson is gonna be in that one. So I want to read that one first this year, since I know the movie's coming out at some point this year. Yes, but again, her writing style. A lot of these authors, if they're not fantasy books, it's how they are written and how easily I just get lost in the story. Like I said, I don't just like fantasy. I like other genres too. Next is Jessica Townsend, and she is the author of the Morgan Crow book, the Nevermore. And I was just in a good mood at the time, because I can be a little particular about middle grade books, where it's written for a younger audience, like between the ages of 10 and 13. Like, with just the way it's written, it's very, you can sometimes with middle grade, you can tell it's very immature compared to young adult or adult books, because it's written for a younger audience, and I have to remind myself of that. I have to be like, okay, this is not written for someone my age. It actually is written for younger than 16. So of course it's going to be the writing style is going to be a little more juvenile. Like, of course, there are some of the middle grade books that definitely seem even more juvenile than most, because of I think they're for early middle grade people. Like a series of unfortunate events. The writing style seems even more immature. Nothing against the author himself, of course, because I know I do believe he has written more adult books. But yeah, there is definitely a difference in the writing style. But this one just hit me right on the spot. And again, it's fantasy, and just this world that Jessica Townsend has created, and the whimsy of it all is so fun and easy and lighthearted and fluffy. And that's kind of what sometimes I'm just in the mood for something lighthearted and fun and adventurous. I mean, sometimes I want books where the stakes are a little bit higher, but I also remember, okay, this is for middle grade, so the stakes aren't going to be as high as a young adult or an adult book. Because you don't want to scare a 13-year-old. But yeah, this hit me on the spot. It was all warm and fuzzy and made me feel good. It was very quick to read. It was definitely, compared to the other middle grade books I read this year, because I did read quite a few, but they were all from the library, because I don't normally buy middle grade reads, because I'm like thinking, I want to read these books, but I am a little old for them. But sometimes, depending on how they're written, like, I think someone my age could get into some of the middle grade books and appreciate them and enjoy them. But yes, her world is just the whimsy of it all, the main character, and just, like, and she's a very interesting main character. I really liked Morgan Crow as a main character. I liked all her characters, and it's just, the story was just so interesting and so entertaining and fun, and I feel like it's Harry Potter meets Alice in Wonderland, all rolled into one big story. So, yes, I know I recently, in my last video, I said I don't like it when authors compare books. That they say, oh, this book is like this book, even though it's probably a marketing tool. But I can see where it comes from in some cases. And in this case, I can see where they get the whole idea of, oh, it's like Harry Potter. But yes, it's just such a fun story, and it's like this girl is cursed, this 12-year-old girl, 11-year-old girl is cursed, and she's blamed for every bad thing that happens in her town, and then this mysterious Jupiter North guy comes and, rescues her right before she's about to die, because it is believed that a cursed child will die on their 11th birthday. So she's rescued and taken to this magical school where she has to compete in these trials to become a member of this wondrous society, where she will be loved and admired by people. And it's such a whimsy story, and I love Jupiter North. Like, he's the kind of mentor characters that I find really entertaining. Like, I like two different kinds, the ones who are a bit eccentric and kind of kooky, but I also like the ones that are very, kind of proper, but kind of, proper and, very serious, but then they also have a very lighthearted side to them, and they're a big softie in the end, and they get stuck having to mentor this hormonal teenager, and then the teenager brings out their softer side. Like, for instance, Buffy and Giles, as an example. If you're familiar with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But yes, I really like her story. And another author is Melissa Albert. I really enjoyed her book, in The Hazelwood. I know a lot of people didn't like, especially when they got to the fairy tale part, but I thought this was it was so fun. I love her writing. It was very gritty and but it was still kind of young adult writing style, but it was also very gritty and serious and a little edgy. There was an edginess to it, a darkness to it. And she created this amazing, whimsical, creepy atmosphere with her story. And I really had fun with that book. And I definitely want to check out more of her books, especially, hopefully, she will continue this series. And I'll have to look up on Goodreads, see if there's, or just on the internet in general, if there's any more information on the sequel, because I do think there's a sequel that I do think she's either working on or is going to, or that it's going through the publishing process, the sequel to the Hazelwood. And the whole idea of the Hazelwood story is so interesting and surprising, and I liked it. I know a lot of people did not like the whole fairy tale aspect of the story, and they also didn't like how jarring it was to be thinking at first that you are in this paranormal story, urban fantasy, and then you get thrown into this full-blown fantasy world. But I personally liked it. But I can understand where it'd be a little jarring, and some people wouldn't like it. But, both these... Okay, so next is one that I can actually grab and show you. Her book. That is Juliet Marillier. She is the author of the Seven Waters trilogy. And I just really, it feels very old school, but it's not, I feel like it wasn't as hard as reading The Fellowship of the Ring. Now maybe it's because of this female author, and maybe that's why the same thing with, The Assassin's Apprentice, that because it was a female author, I don't know, maybe not, but this is basically a retelling of the Six Swan story, set in Ireland, and it's not like Sarah J. Maas, where it's a really epic fighting fantasy story. It's very character driven about this young woman who must save her brothers, and like in the fairy tale, she must make these shirts made out of special material that could prick her, and she's a mute, she can't say anything to anybody, and by a certain time she has to put the shirts on her brothers herself to save them, and there's war involved. And our main character goes through so much in this story. She's put in a very dark place. And there is romance, but I feel like the romance doesn't come until later in the story. Like, it's definitely a little bit more prominent, but it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't come until like a little, like at the halfway point. Like, it doesn't come until the second half of the story. And it's very well written. And again, another story that I feel myself getting lost in, and just these characters that she creates who are all individual. And there are a lot of characters in this book. And I definitely want to read the rest of this series, because she has written other books, in this world. But what's kind of cool about this is that with this particular trilogy / series, you can read these books individually, because they do end. They have a beginning, a middle, and end. And the second book is about a completely different character. So it's like, you can read these books and not be like, and it's not like you have to read the second book to get the end of this story. It has an ending. But again, I just really love her writing, and I want to read more of her books. But she is an older author. So sometimes, like with my books a million, it is hard, and with my books a million, there's no guarantee that I will find her books. And there's definitely no guarantee I'll find them at the used bookstore, because it takes donated books, and the people that live in my town would not read a book I don't see them reading a book like this. Although I have gotten lucky a couple times. Like, I've seen one of Brandon Sanderson's books there, and I've also seen, and there's other young adult fantasy series that I've seen there on occasion, and Harry Potter's been there. And they do have Stephen King, but it's a small there's not like a separate section for Stephen King. So occasionally I've been lucky and come across books like this, but so far I haven't seen any Juliet Marillier's books. Oh wait, no, I do have her books. I just remembered, I have her, I think, oh wait, no, actually it's Robin Hobb, never mind. I don't know if I have any. Yeah, I've only had Robin Hobb's books. I don't think I have come across any Julie Marillier at all. But yes, I just really enjoy her books. I enjoyed this one, so I think I would enjoy her other books. So I might have to get those online. So I'd have to ask my mom to get them. Because I actually don't have the right thing to go. Okay, next is number 8 is Madeline Miller. And that is Circe, is her books of hers that I've read, and I really enjoyed the story. It's a very character-driven story, character-driven piece, and it's the origin story of Circe, the witch from the Odyssey. Now, I've never read the Odyssey because I don't know if I could, but just in case you don't, she was, Odysseus travels and ends up on her island. She turns most of his crew into pigs, and she traps him on the island for a year. And she ends up carrying his child. But it's about her story and how she was, when she was living on Olympus, and then she gets kicked out because they find out she's a witch, and she is forced to live on this island, Aiaia, and this is her story, how she becomes the powerful witch that she is, and all of her encounters with the many characters from the Odyssey, and just how she develops as a being, and how she slowly gets stronger. I know not everybody loved this, but I personally loved it. I really enjoyed her writing, Madeline Miller's writing, and I want to read her other book, Song of Achilles. I just haven't gotten around to it, and I keep checking to see if it's at the used bookstore, but so far it hasn't been there, which is a bit disappointing, but I have seen it there at least once, and that always seems to happen. I see a book I've heard about on BookTube, I'm thinking, oh, I'll get it next time, and then it ends up next time it ends up not being there, and sometimes I get lucky and they do end up being there, but so far I haven't seen Song of Achilles yet. But Song of Achilles is also kind of in the same setting, not the same setting as this book, but kind of the same Greek mythology story. That one deals with the Trojan War, and we have Achilles, and it's Achilles' story from his lover's perspective, I think. So, but I love how she writes, and just such a fun, and this one was so fun to read, and I think the other one will be fun to read as well. And it kind of introduces me to the whole mythology world without having to read the original material, which would be, I keep wondering if that would be a little too challenging for me to read. Okay, next, I only have 2 more authors left. And the first one I want to talk about is Neil Gaiman. That's another one I discovered this year. I have been meaning to read Neil Gaiman because I had bought American Gods by him. From BJ's when I went to visit my sister in Virginia. And BJ's is like a warehouse type store and they do have books in there, but it's a small table of books. But some of the other BJ's I've been to, it's even, our BJ's back in Maryland, the BJ's back in Maryland is a lot bigger than the BJ's in, South Carolina or in Virginia. But still, I was able to find it there. And as you can see, I intend to start reading this year, soon. But so far I've read 2 of his books, his more younger audience books, one of them was a middle grade story about a boy living in a graveyard being raised by ghosts. That's the Graveyard Book. And then his other one is actually in the kids section of the library, but the story gives me the impression that it's not a kid's book. Just the plot. It's about a kid, but it's not a kid's book, and it should not be in there. And the next time I go to the library, which I don't know when that will be, I feel like, depending on which librarian is there, I feel like I should tell them, okay, so maybe it's none of my business, but I noticed there's a Neil Gaiman book that is in the kids section, and from what I read, it's not. I mean, I read the book, and it's definitely not a kid book. Like, yes, it's about a kid, but it's told from adult talking about his childhood experience, and like he witnesses his dad having an affair and having sex with his young assistant. So I don't. It shouldn't be in the kids section. But I mean, maybe I'll just move it myself. I don't know. I might get, I don't think I would get in trouble for that. They would just put it back, thinking it could be. And then I also read his collection of short stories, Trigger Warning, which I thought was okay. I like the other two books better. And there's no cohesiveness to Trigger Warning, I feel like. It was, all the stories were several different stories that weren't connected at all. There was no overall theme, except for the fact that they were all kind of weird and a little magical. But other than that, I really like his writing. I enjoy it, and I enjoy these worlds that he's created. And he's just this famous fantasy author that I feel like another one that I just gotta read. I mean, if I can't read Tolkien, I can at least read Neil Gaiman. And so far, I've liked what I've read by him so far. And I definitely enjoy this. It's just like I gotta take the time and actually sit down and read the book. But the downside of having, like, where my parents are away and I have the house to myself is that I end up going downstairs and watching TV. And because I just don't like quietness bothers me. So it's like I have to turn on the TV, but then I get distracted. And I don't have music down here. Well, I guess I actually know I could use Alexa. I could use her. And I wonder if she heard me. But, I could use her and play music from her, but, I don't know. I don't know. But either way, I get sidetracked. But anyway, but yes, I want to read this book. I want to continue reading this. And I just want to keep reading his books. I want to get more into them, because he has a lot of books, of all different ages. So yes, I've enjoyed it so far. Okay, that's the good thing about these magnetic bookmarks is they don't fall out. Regular bookmarks tend to fall out if you drop your book. But magnetic bookmarks, they will stay in. Okay, this is the last one. And this is one I don't have any for books, because the one book of hers that I've read so far this year, I got at the library. But I'm definitely interested in the sequel to this book. And that is Holly Black. She writes a lot of fairy books, like Sarah J. Maas. But what I really like about her books, her fairy books, the thing I like about her books is that she writes a lot closer to how fairies really are. I feel like, from what I know. They're tricksters, they're manipulators, they're not nice and cutesy and pretty, and they're not going to be all friendly. They're mischief makers, and sometimes they'll kill you, and it's just, her stories are so fun and so dark and edgy, so far from I shouldn't say stories because I only read one book by her, but I just really enjoyed it, and I want to read the sequel to it, which the one I read was The Cruel Prince, and I want to read the sequel, which is The Wicked King, that I don't know if it came out or if it's coming out in a week or two, but I want to read The Wicked King, and then I want to read The Darkest Part of the Forest, but I don't know if I want to buy it or not, because I don't know if it would be I don't think it will be at the used bookstore, so if I get it at Books A Million, it's definitely not going to be cheap. And I haven't seen it at the library. I just saw The Cruel Prince at the library. I didn't see The Darkest Part of the Forest, from what I remember, but it's another situation where it's been a long time and I don't remember. So it might be there, it might not be. But if it is, I'll get it from the library. If not, I will buy that one in The Wicked King. Problem is, there are so many other authors' books that I want to buy that I'm even more interested in, just a little bit more interested in buying than the other one. But yes, I love how she writes the fairies, how it feels like they're a lot closer to how fairies really are, and they're not just all romanticism. And plus, I kind of do like toxic couples. You know, stories about, like, that are more gritty and dark with the romance. And I'm not talking like erotica or anything like that. I'm talking like these two people can't stand each other, but at the same time they like love. They are attracted to each other. They are drawn to each other, and they are kind of perfect together because they're both so horribly screwed up. And that's what I like about the two, about Cardan and Jude in that story, in The Cruel Prince. I know a lot of people don't like it, and they don't know why Cardan is a love interest because he's a douchebag. But like I said, I like romances where you are where people, there are half the people who read it think that way. They're like, why is this guy so, why is he a love interest? Like, I like having asked that question of why is this person deserving to be a love interest? Because I don't think every love interest is going to be all nice and sweet and. Like, I'm not talking necessarily that I want an abusive guy as the love interest. I'm not saying that. I don't want, like, I'm not talking, like, from what I hear about Colleen Hoover, is she, now, I could be wrong, don't attack me, I'm just going by what I heard about her, is that there is a lot of that in some of her books. She does write about that. And, of course, she's also people do argue that she's trying to make a point with writing about those kind of relationships, saying these relationships are bad. But anyway, but it doesn't matter because I'm just not interested in the contemporary genre, except for maybe adult contemporary. You could argue some of the books I read that are adult books are more contemporary, like the literary books I read that I've gotten into are contemporary set. But like young adult contemporary. But anyway, like I said, in fantasy stories, I like it when we have those kind of relationships. I think that's why I'm kind of a Buffy fan on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because yes, in reality, Buffy and Spike shouldn't be together. They're a toxic couple. But I just like, I love seeing their story develop. And by season 7, it eventually does become a genuine love story, like a real romance. But of course, I am aware that sometimes just the line Spike crossed is not enough for some people, and they will never support those kind of relationships, whether it's in fantasy or in contemporary. But like I said, I like I like the story. I like how dark and edgy it is, and I love, like I said, I like how it feels like it's a little closer to how it doesn't romanticize the Fae. Of course, again, some people have said that the reasons they don't like it is because of just how it's basically like you're in high school, except for like dealing with high school, the popular bully kids, except for that they're fairies, so they have magical powers. But anyway, but yeah, so those are the authors that I discovered back in 2018, and I'm going to continue pursuing those authors and reading more of their books this year. So I would love to know what authors you are interested in this year, if there are any authors that you would like to share that you discovered in 2018, and if you would like to continue with them this year. So if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell icon below if you are interested in finding out when my videos are uploaded, when I upload a new video. And I hope, as always, you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!